Taiwan, right? It's been in the news a lot lately. And today we're going to do a deep dive into why it's such a geopolitical hotspot.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely a place to watch.
We're going to be checking out this DW News video. Um, it's called Why China and the U.S. Are So Obsessed with Taiwan Mapped Out.
Oh, that's a good one. I saw that one too.
Yeah, it has a ton of good expert commentary from both the U.S. and China, which,
Yeah, you need both sides.
you need both sides to get like the full picture.
Exactly.
The first thing that struck me when watching it was that map of Taiwan.
Oh my gosh.
It's only 80 miles from mainland China.
It's so close.
And then they show footage of Chinese military drills, and they're basically practicing to encircle the entire island.
I know, it's kind of scary.
It's pretty chilling.
Yeah, just that visual of how close it is and like the power dynamic right there.
Yeah.
And to understand China's perspective, you really have to look back at their history.
Okay.
The Chinese Civil War in the late 1940s ended with the communists taking control of mainland China. And the nationalists fled to Taiwan. And so that's how you ended up with two governments claiming to be the real China.
Ah, so that's where that comes from.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's kind of like this historical wound that never quite healed.
Yeah.
And now it's like a global flashpoint.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it.
But Taiwan's importance goes way beyond just history, too.
Oh, for sure.
It's really strategic, just geographically.
Absolutely.
Can you talk a little more about that?
So, just think about maritime traffic.
Okay.
Taiwan is right smack in the middle of three super important straits.
Okay.
The Taiwan Strait, the Miyako Strait, and the Bashi Strait.
And these are not just random waterways.
No. They are major shipping routes
Oh, wow.
for global trade. And the video actually points out that almost all the world's largest container ships pass through the Taiwan Strait.
Whoa, it's a lot of ships.
It's a lot of cargo. It really makes you realize how everything is connected.
Yeah.
So if there were a conflict there,
Oh, gosh, yeah.
it would disrupt global trade big time.
For every...
Yeah, potentially.
Both the U.S. and China rely on these straits for their own trade.
Right, and any disruption
Yeah.
could have huge economic consequences.
Makes sense.
There's a Chinese expert featured in the video, Victor Gao, and he makes a really interesting point.
Okay, what's that?
He says that Taiwan literally interrupts the continuity of the Chinese coastline,
Oh, wow.
and it blocks their access to the Pacific Ocean. So from China's perspective,
Yeah.
it's like this barrier in their way
I see.
that's preventing them from being a dominant maritime power.
It's like they're boxed in.
Kinda, yeah. And of course, the U.S. is trying to counter that.
Yeah, that's where the first island chain comes into play, right?
Exactly. That's their strategy.
I've heard that term, but what is that exactly?
So basically, it's a chain of U.S. military bases that stretch from Japan all the way down to the Philippines, with Taiwan right in the middle.
Oh, right in the middle.
It's essentially a way for the U.S. to project power and to contain China's influence. And the video actually shows a map of all these bases, and it makes it pretty clear what the U.S. is trying to do.
Okay, so it's almost like a geopolitical chess match then.
Yeah, and the stakes are super high because these straits are not just for trade.
Right.
They're essential for, naval power projection.
I can see how that would get really tense.
Oh, yeah. And the video actually shows footage of U.S. and Philippine troops doing military exercises.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they even sink an old Chinese ship.
Oh, wow.
So it's pretty much a clear message to Beijing that the U.S. is serious about defending their interests there.
It's interesting how China views Taiwan almost as this obstacle.
Yeah.
But there's this deeper historical and ideological angle to it all, too.
Yeah, definitely.
The whole national rejuvenation concept.
Yeah.
What does that even mean exactly?
So the video goes into this idea of the century of humiliation, which was this period in Chinese history full of foreign invasions and internal struggles.
Wow.
And it's this powerful narrative that continues to fuel this resentment.
I see.
And this desire to restore China's former glory. There's this one image that really stood out to me.
What was that?
They show this caricature of China being carved up by foreign powers.
Oh, God.
And it just drives home the point that Xi Jinping sees retaking Taiwan as central to this national rejuvenation project.
Wow. So for China, it's about way more than just territory then.
Yeah, it's about righting historical wrongs.
Wow.
And reclaiming their rightful place on the world stage.
It's almost like it's built into their national identity at this point.
Totally. And it's intertwined with Xi Jinping's vision of China's future.
Yeah.
The video even includes a quote from Xi Jinping himself.
Oh, really?
where he states that no one can block the reunification of China,
Wow.
peaceful or otherwise.
Oh, wow. That's pretty strong language.
Yeah, he's serious.
So it sounds like he's really drawing a line in the sand there.
Absolutely.
But what about the Taiwanese people?
That's a good question.
Where do they fit into all of this?
That's what we're going to talk about next. It's easy to get lost in all the military talk and the politics.
Yeah,
But, there are 23 million people who actually live in Taiwan,
that's true.
each with their own story.
Right. It's easy to forget about the human side of things when we're talking about, geopolitics.
Exactly.
What does the video tell us about what life is like for everyday people in Taiwan?
Well, Taiwan has developed into a really thriving democracy.
Mm.
They were the first in Asia to legalize same-sex marriage,
Wow.
which, highlights the difference in values compared to mainland China.
Yeah, that's a pretty stark contrast.
It is.
You got this vibrant democracy right on China's doorstep.
Yeah.
I imagine that creates some tension.
Oh, definitely. And the video does a good job capturing that sense of uncertainty that a
Yeah.
lot of Taiwanese people feel.
Yeah.
They're living with this constant threat from China.
Makes sense.
But they're also wary of becoming too reliant on the U.S.
Oh, so they're kind of caught in the middle.
Exactly. Stuck between these two superpowers.
Mm-hmm. It must be hard to sort of navigate that.
It is. It's a complex situation,
Right.
and there's no single Taiwanese viewpoint.
Right.
The video has interviews with several Taiwanese citizens,
Okay.
and their perspectives are really all over the place.
So what are some of the things that they say?
Some of them see the U.S. as a protector,
Hmm.
a friend,
Yeah.
while others are more skeptical of U.S. involvement,
Right.
and some acknowledge the ties to mainland China.
Economically and culturally?
Exactly. But others really emphasize their distinct Taiwanese identity.
So there's a real mix of viewpoints.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It sounds like there's a desire for agency, though.
Yes.
For self-determination.
They want to control their own destiny.
Right, but they're stuck
Exactly.
between these two superpowers.
And this is where the ideological differences really come into play.
Okay.
Taiwan has embraced democracy
Right.
and capitalism, while China remains a one-party state with a more socialist system.
Right. Fundamentally different.
Yeah. And it complicates things even further.
For sure.
You brought up TSMC earlier.
Yeah.
The video mentions how China controlling that would give them this massive advantage
Oh, yeah.
in the global tech industry.
It's hard to overstate how important those chips are.
And if China had control over 90% of the production,
That would shift the balance of power.
oh, absolutely. It'd be a game changer.
Yeah. So it's not just about the territory.
Nope.
It's about ideology, economics, global power.
It's everything.
So is there any possibility for a peaceful resolution here?
Well, the video lays out a few scenarios.
Okay.
And none of them are particularly great.
Oh, boy.
One possibility is that things just stay the same,
Okay.
status quo. Both sides maintain their positions and try to avoid a conflict.
But that just sounds like kicking the can down the road.
It does, right? It's a powder keg just waiting to explode.
Yeah.
Any little misstep could trigger a crisis.
So what are some other possibilities?
Well, China could decide to up the pressure, maybe a naval blockade,
Oh.
or even a full-scale invasion.
And how would the U.S. respond to that?
Well, they've pledged to support Taiwan,
Right.
but they also don't want a war with a nuclear-armed China.
Yeah. Nobody wants that.
It's a delicate balancing
It
act.
sounds like we're headed for a clash.
It does feel that way sometimes.
Is there any hope for diplomacy at this point?
While some experts believe that dialogue is the best way forward,
Okay.
but it would require both sides to, make some concessions,
Yeah.
which is hard with the current political climate.
Yeah. I can imagine.
It's tough to see either side backing down.
True.
But, diplomacy is about bridging those divides. It's
Yeah.
about finding common ground,
Yeah.
building trust.
So what's the takeaway for our listeners?
The most important thing is to understand that the Taiwan issue is incredibly complex.
Yeah.
There are no easy answers.
Right.
We can't oversimplify things.
We need to stay informed.
Yes.
Think critically about the information we're consuming.
Exactly. Don't just accept the headlines.
Yeah.
Dig deeper.
Go beyond the sound bites.
Exactly. Consider all the perspectives.
Because this isn't just about Taiwan.
Right.
This is about global peace and stability.
It's about the future.
It feels like we're at this crossroads, and no matter which way we go,
Yeah.
it could be dangerous.
It's tricky.
Is there any, historical precedent for this kind of situation?
Mm.
Or is this totally new territory?
It's interesting because while the situation with Taiwan is unique,
Okay.
history is full of these kinds of rivalries between major powers,
Oh, yeah.
especially over places that are strategically important.
Right, like I'm thinking of the Cold War.
Exactly.
Or like even the scramble for colonies back in the 1800s.
Those are all great examples.
So we're seeing a lot of the same things happening with Taiwan.
Yeah, that mix of political ideology, economic interests,
Yeah.
and just national pride.
It's all tangled up.
It is. So are there any lessons we can learn from the past?
That's a good question.
Like, what pitfalls should we be watching out for?
Yeah, because it feels like we're walking on eggshells.
Well, one thing history teaches us is that miscalculation can be really dangerous,
Oh, yeah.
especially when things are already tense.
Right.
Even small incidents can escalate quickly.
Like what kinds of things are you thinking?
Well, like, think about the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand.
That started World War I, right?
Exactly.
Wow.
Or the Cuban Missile Crisis.
That was scary.
Oh my gosh, we were so close to nuclear war.
Yeah.
So in the context of Taiwan,
Yeah.
it could be a military exercise, a cyber attack,
Yeah.
even just an accident.
That could set things off.
Exactly. It makes you realize how fragile peace really is.
It does.
Another lesson from history, though,
Okay.
is how important communication and diplomacy are.
Even when it seems impossible.
Yeah, even then. Like, think about the Cold War.
Okay.
The U.S. and the Soviet Union hated each other,
Yeah.
but they still talked.
Okay.
They had these channels of communication.
To avoid blowing each other up.
Right. It wasn't easy, and there were some close calls.
Oh, I bet.
But diplomacy helped prevent a much bigger war.
So even though things seem really bad with Taiwan right now,
Yeah.
there's still hope that talking can help.
I think so. It's easy to just focus on the military stuff
Yeah.
and all the tough talk.
Right.
But there are people on both sides working behind the scenes
Okay.
to keep those lines of communication open.
That's good to know.
Yeah. And, they're looking for ways to de-escalate things.
So it's not all doom and gloom.
No. Diplomacy is a constant process,
Yeah, that makes sense.
even when things are really tense.
Okay, so we've talked about history and diplomacy,
Yeah.
but what about technology?
Ooh, good point.
How does that factor into all of this?
Well, that's a huge question.
Yeah.
And one we should be paying more attention to.
Yeah, like how could things like AI,
Yeah.
autonomous weapons,
Mm-hmm.
cyber warfare,
All that stuff. It could make things a lot worse.
how so?
Well, just imagine AI systems making decisions about military action.
Without any humans involved.
Exactly.
That's kind of terrifying.
Or picture swarms of autonomous drones
Oh, wow.
carrying out these unpredictable attacks.
It sounds like something out of a movie.
I know, but it's becoming more and more real.
Okay, so that's the scary side of technology.
Yeah.
But could it also help?
Potentially, yes. Like, what if we use technology for de-escalation?
Oh, okay, interesting.
Like, imagine sophisticated simulations
Okay,
that could help leaders understand what might happen.
before they actually do anything.
Exactly. Or secure communication platforms.
So they can talk without things getting lost in translation.
Yeah. So technology is a double-edged sword.
For sure.
It can make things better or worse.
So it really comes down to how we use it.
Exactly.
Well, this has been a really eye-opening deep dive.
It has.
We started by asking why Taiwan is such a geopolitical hotspot.
Right.
And we've uncovered all this history, ideology, economics, military strategy.
It's complicated.
It is.
But it's important to remember,
What's that?
this isn't just some abstract geopolitical thing.
Yeah.
It's about real people's lives.
Millions of them.
Exactly.
So as we keep following this story,
Yeah,
let's do it responsibly.
absolutely.
Let's try to understand all the sides.
Mm-hmm.
And let's hope for peaceful solutions.
I agree.
The stakes are just too high to ignore it.
Well said.
And that's it for today's deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic, so stay tuned.